What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I'm going to be talking about the one and only NIO stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to break down some very important information about Jerome Powell that just came out as he was actually testifying in front of Congress. So I'm going to break down what he just said, why this is actually causing the market to crash right now, and whether or not this will actually continue tomorrow as he will be speaking again in front of the US House. Now, before I break anything down about this, before I get into any more details about what's going on with the market, what's going on with Jerome Powell, and what you should be watching for tomorrow, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 7 free stocks, and 5 out of those 7 free stocks could be a free NIO share, a free Tesla share, or a mix of all of them. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 3 weeks. Make sure you check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So when it comes to NIO, this thing's down over 3.5% for the day. I made a prediction yesterday that Jerome Powell would most likely be hawkish, but I did also prepare you guys for either possibility. I told you that if he was actually like on the dovish side, if he pumped the markets, NIO could have gotten a nice push to the upside. If he was hawkish, NIO would likely crash into this zone right here between 9 and 9.13, if not lower. And that's what actually has been happening so far. The market does close in about a while. Actually, we have almost an hour left at the time I'm recording this. But I just want to note that it's not looking that good for the bulls. I'm going to break down exactly why. So Jerome Powell was speaking, okay? Basically, he was being interrogated by the US Senate, and they did a relatively good job at actually getting him to open up about a lot of things. I did actually disagree with some of the points many senators made on both sides of the political aisle, but that's not really my main point. My main point is they still did a pretty good job at getting the guy to talk. Even though they did twist arguments here and there and like criticize him for bringing pain to Americans. I mean, it's not really Jerome Powell's fault he has to do this. And if he stepped aside, right, if he did just step aside and let inflation run like this, it would be even more detrimental. So it is okay to cause some pain now, even if it's major pain, to bring down inflation, then instead of actually letting us essentially live like this. So then some of the points Powell made were he's going to be more restrictive on policy. He's prepared to continue to raise rates. The terminal rate is likely going to be higher than they expected, meaning the Fed has to be a lot more hawkish. And on top of that, he also mentioned the fact that overall, there has not been a whole ton of progress, or they're not really at where they want them to be. Inflation is not where they want it to be, essentially, and there's so much work that has to be done. Powell also mentioned that they're going to continue to raise rates and be reactive to what the data tells us, meaning that he actually backed out of the whole disinflation claim he made. And he also he implicitly stated that we could enter a tough recession. He did say that unemployment will most likely end up going up, not just going up, but actually reach higher levels than expected. He was questioned on that. Now, this is important because you have to remember in the beginning, this Jerome Powell guy was saying there's going to be a soft landing. The landing is going to be soft. Now, are we seeing that? No, we're not seeing that. We're actually seeing more and more evidence that unemployment is going to continue to go up to relatively high numbers. We're also going to see more tightening in the economy, even more than what the Fed expected. And the landing is likely not going to be soft. It's going to be a medium to hard compared to like 2008, maybe more on the hard side, unfortunately. And on top of that, Jerome Powell also mentioned the fact that he has to like back out of saying disinflation because we still have to wait. He did say that there has been some progress for certain sectors, but for the most part we're not ready yet. He didn't even say the word pause. He had to be more hawkish. He has to let us know that they're going to be more restrictive. They're going to continue to tighten. They're going to be more hawkish. The market, as a result of this, is starting to price in a 50 basis point rate hike for March, meaning that there's more downside to come. We're only about 69% of the time or the way there at the time I'm recording it, meaning that there's more and more downside the market's preparing for. On top of that, there's a possibility, all right? Even though it's very slim, there is a slight possibility we could try to bounce by Friday, maybe going into next week, but I'm not really banking on it. And if anything, this would be a very good short opportunity if we do get any bounce. Once again, I'm not really banking on it, I'm not counting on it. I'm saying this because the market makers do like to manipulate stocks. And on top of that, once again, it could be a good opportunity for more shorts to pile in. I'm saying this because the shorts are likely going to take advantage of this, and there's likely going to be a lot more downside, especially if the next inflationary reports that come out are relatively hot. Seeing the dollar index, this thing is actually climbing like crazy. This is often a sign that inflation is hot. Inflation is very hot, and we're likely going to see it continue to increase, thus making the Fed more aggressive. So, why is tomorrow such a massive day? Today, Jerome Powell spoke in front of the US Senate, right? And look at how the market moved. We got a big drop in the markets. It happened so fast in the beginning, and it's actually continuing at the time I'm speaking right now. For tomorrow, Jerome Powell is speaking again at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time, and he's going to be speaking in front of the U.S. House. And we know the House has more, how should I say, people who are louder, if anything. Uh, they're actually more present in the House, and they're going to make sure they question this guy. They're not going to let him, like, jump around questions. Jerome Powell is going to be on the spotlight. He's going to have to answer these questions, and they're likely going to cause him to become even more hawkish, unfortunately. I made the prediction yesterday that he most likely be hawkish. That's what ended up happening. Now, for NIO, what am I essentially seeing? Wednesdays, NIO tends to be green 56% of the time. We tend to have good days on Wednesdays. Short interest has been declining. Excuse me, sorry guys. Short interest has been declining quite a bit for NIO over the last couple of days. And finally, I just wanted to note that as far as the price pairs ratio goes, it's been lowering very, very hard, meaning that NIO has been underperforming. It's likely going to continue on this trend, unfortunately. What am I saying for tomorrow? Honestly, guys, it depends on Jerome Powell, what he ends up saying. But like I said before, all right, I went over the bullish and bearish possibilities with you guys yesterday. And I told you guys we'd most likely see the bearish possibilities play out because Powell would most likely be hawkish. That's exactly what happened. I told you guys there's this gap on SPY. We're likely going to fill it. Once we fill the gap, I think we're doing it right now. We're likely going to see SPY continue and try to actually hold this important trend line around the mid 390s. But if that doesn't hold, then you have to watch for 393, then 390. So, there could be a lot of downside coming. I don't know if we're going to get a counter trend bounce first, but even if we bounce, even if the bounce happens like a little bit later this week, it does not necessarily excite me because I know eventually we're most likely going to see more downside because of the tightening of financial conditions, high inflation, the jobs market still being too strong, and the amount of fear that's going to be incited by some bad data, especially the next CPI report that's coming out in just 1 week from the time I'm recording this. What does all of this mean for NIO? Well, for NIO, you have to remember some important zones. If you're bullish on NIO, you're going to be watching this like 9.3 area. We do have a gap there. And there's also like the 9.8 gap fill all the way up there. If you're bearish on NIO, well, we're actually breaking below the key demand zone between 9 and 9.13 at the time of recording this. If we don't hold 9, the next level is going to be 8.76. If that fails, 8.33, then $8. So NIO is going to likely continue to downtrend. What do the odds favor? In my opinion, the odds are favoring NIO either trying to bounce first and then continuing to drop, but eventually it will most likely come into the 8s and retest $8. So I am seeing more downside for NIO and the overall market. And I do think Powell, it's very likely the guy is going to become aggressive tomorrow and he's going to be like questioned very hard. He doesn't like it, but there's nothing he can do about it. It's his duty as chairman of the Fed to actually be present, to be honest. I mean, he's not always honest, but you understand my point. It's his duty to actually be present in front of Congress and answer questions. The dollar is continuing to rocket, bearish for the stock market. The VIX, I told you guys the VIX would likely bounce between 18 or 17.8. We bounced off 18.16. This thing's continuing to go up. The major resistance zone I was talking about was around 9.7. This is like 9.7 something, almost 9.8. Right now, we're very close to it. We're at about 9, not 9, 19.8, sorry. And we're currently at about 19.68. So we're getting very close to it. VIX right now is bouncing. Once again, that's because the market's coming down. Market's going to likely continue as time goes on. The odds are in the bears' favor. So I hope this was clear, guys. Be ready for tomorrow. Very important day. And with that said, thank you all so much for listening. Be ready. Once again, Powell is going to be speaking tomorrow at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time for Wednesday in front of the House this time. This will affect how the whole market moves. The odds do favor him being more hawkish. Once again, we might see NIO continue to drop into the 8s going forward. It might try to bounce first to get back to the 9s just temporarily, but that doesn't matter too much because eventually we're going to come into the 8s, in my opinion. All the way down to 8.3, followed by $8. Okay? Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of the day. I know this was not what you wanted to hear, but just remember, for the long term, I'm still very bullish on NIO. So NIO to the moon, because the long term future is still very, very bright despite the short term nuances. And peace out.